It's salsa time, and today we're going to make a really easy salsa for you to enjoy by canning it, and you can have it for later use. Salsa is probably one of the most popular things that people like to can at home, but what a lot of people don't remember is that any kind of mixture that you put together for your own fresh salsa cannot necessarily be canned safely. So today we're going to talk about the reasons why. Today's recipe is really easy. It uses onions, and it uses a variety of peppers. It uses tomatoes, ground pepper, salt, and lemon juice. So let's talk about these different ingredients. To start off with, onions, you can use whatever kind of onion that you would like. So if you want to put in a red onion or use white or yellow onions, you can do that. On the peppers, you can use any variety of pepper, and that will give you some control on how hot or how mild you would like your salsa to be. So this mixture today is a mixture of bell peppers, jalapeno peppers, poblano peppers, and a serrano pepper, just to kick up the heat. And then for tomatoes, today we're using plum tomatoes, and these types of tomatoes are less juicy than your larger slicing type tomatoes, so you'll end up with just a little bit thicker salsa. Ground pepper is your standard ground pepper. Salt, we're using canning salt today, and in any kind of canning, this is pure salt, and this works for pickles or any other type of canned produce that you would like to make. And then for the acid, we're using lemon juice. Now, you could use the option of vinegar. If a recipe calls for vinegar, you could use lemon or lime juice in place of that. And you want to use bottled lemon or lime juice because it has a consistent acid content. So for the amounts for this recipe, and this is a tested recipe, we encourage people to use tested recipes in order to get a safe salsa in the end. For the onions, this recipe calls for 1 pound of onions. It calls for 2 pounds of peppers, and it calls for 5 pounds of tomatoes. For the seasonings, it calls for 1/2 teaspoon of pepper, 3 teaspoons of salt, and then for the lemon juice, we're using 1 cup. So let's talk about how do we prepare these vegetables. As you can see, I have these chopped up for you, but I'm going to show you an easy way to peel your tomatoes. I'm going to show you how to easily peel your tomatoes so that you don't have to use a knife to get the peeling off. The only time you have to use a knife is to get the stem off the tomatoes. So we'll just cut that off. Over here, I have a pan of hot water cooking on the stove, and you just drop your tomatoes in the hot water. And what this will do is soften up the skin, and it only takes about 30 to 60 seconds. And this is long enough for the peels to soften on the outside of the tomato, and then after they've been in here, and I've had some in here for about 60 seconds now, you take them out and you put them in ice water so that it stops the cooking process, cools them off, and makes them a lot easier to handle. And the peel will just slip right off. How easy they peel also makes a difference on how ripe your tomatoes are. If they're a little underripe, the peel is going to be a little bit harder to come off. But it definitely saves a lot of time. All right. So now we're ready to chop up some of our vegetables. So we'll start with the tomatoes, and one tool that I found is really easy to use is this chopper. There's many ways to chop up your vegetables. You could just use a regular knife and cutting board, such as I have here, or you can use one of these handy choppers. You could use a food processor, but you want to be very careful with that because you can incorporate a lot of air in your tomatoes. And it's hard to get that air out. And if you have too much air in your salsa mixture, that can stay trapped in the jar, and it could cause seal failure on your canning jars. So there we have our tomatoes getting chopped, and see how fast that goes. All right, we'll stop at that one. Now, for onions, you can do the same thing. If you're using a chopper like this, you want to cut your onion up into chunks. You could also replace some of your onions with garlic and add a little zest that way by using some garlic. We'll cut this part of the onion yet. Now for peppers, these are jalapeno peppers. If you have trouble handling hot peppers or your skin is sensitive, you will want to use some plastic gloves. This will help protect your skin, and especially you don't want to touch your face or your eyes after you've been handling hot peppers. So you want to cut the stem off of those. You can remove the inside of the peppers. This is another way to control the heat on peppers. I'll slice this in half. You can take out the membranes and the seeds. That's where a lot of the heat is in hot peppers. And the compound that causes the heat is called capsaicin. Peppers are rated on what's called a Scoville unit scale. Mild peppers, such as bell peppers, are rated at a 0. And then when you get into the hot peppers, like a jalapeno or a habanero pepper, that gets up into the hundreds of thousands of Scoville units. So the hotter the pepper, obviously the hotter your salsa. And so we'll chop up our pepper just like that. So that makes it go really quickly.